Farm for Profit Podcast. Take a listen, have a blast. Farm for Profit Podcast. Learn about farming while having a laugh. Farm for Profit Podcast.
And listeners, every episode that we do, we ask a power question. What do we call this?
Payoff question is what you
payoff
always
question.
say. That's what you always say.
Payoff question.
I knew it was a P.
And now it's time to celebrate the first half of 2023. But before we get into the answers to what does success mean to you or look like to you, we've got a killer guest to have with us on this podcast. Jacqueline is a former Kansas State University Wildcat, if I read that correctly, an athlete and founder of Loeffler Prime Performance Beef. So excited to learn a little bit about her operation before we jump into some success quotes. Welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
So tell our listeners a little bit about who you are and what you guys are doing down there.
Yeah, so I'm Jacqueline Loeffler, Americus, Kansas, which is East Central Kansas, and grew up on a typical Kansas farm and ranch operation, so corn, soybeans, and wheat. And then we transitioned out of the cow-calf operation, and now we're just backgrounding feeders, stockers, and then we retain those into fat cattle. So growing up, I wanted absolutely nothing to do with the farm except for the fact to show my 4-H animals and put that money in my bank account. And I guess as the older I got, the more I kind of got more involved with people in agriculture, even though I didn't mean to. It was just kind of by chance, as some people would say, but I kind of felt like it was God guiding me towards the path that I was supposed to be on all along. I just took a wiggly path to get there. And so through track and field at Kansas State University, I actually got intertwined with the dean of the vet department, and he fed us lunch every Sunday after church, him and his wife. And so there was a group of us around that table just having life conversations. And within those conversations, I started to hear about animal science and different aspects of agriculture that were intriguing to me because I knew all about them, but had no idea I wanted to know more. So I tried to actually switch my degree to animal science. And at that time, the dean of the vet department had switched, and I happened to be coaching her son, Sam. And so I just couldn't get away from animal science. And unfortunately, the way the NCAA works, I was unable to switch my degree or I would have lost my fluoride scholarship. So
Wow.
it was either go way into debt and pursue what I wanted to, or finish out what I'd already started and then just figure it out from there and put networks and connections. I guess we'd replace the degree. And so I got 2 degrees, kinesiology med, and then family studies and human services. And so I finished out my track and field career and needed a place to live. And we had just lost our renters in the house that I'm currently sitting in, and said, "Hey, Dad, can I use it as a storage unit for a while?" And I haven't left. And so I was lucky enough, I started coaching collegiately at Emporia State University, which is in the MIAA Division II. Got to live out that dream while working on the family farm. And so all of those things are intertwined. But if you want to make no money and no sleep, you coach collegiately and farm and ranch with your family. And so at the end of the day, farming and ranching kind of won out as my grandpa was transitioning out. And I knew if I wanted to see our family's legacy continue, somebody needed to be here to continue on. And so I get to work every day with my dad and have built my own value-added business along with that, Loeffler Prime Performance. Loeffler being my last name, Prime being the beef that I sell direct to consumer, and Performance being my private coaching business.
Oh,
Holy smokes.
it's all interchanged.
That combined all of it.
Yeah.
I wish we'd had a thought-provoking title of the podcast that did that.
That was actually cool.
That didn't have a stupid number in the middle of it. So that's exciting that you kind of took a roundabout path in agriculture. You didn't know exactly what you wanted to do. So you said you were track and field, right? And D1 sports, that's pretty intense.
Yeah, growing up, I was lucky enough from 6th grade on, I actually had a college coach, just the way the cards fell. He was getting ready to transition more into having a family, and so he started coaching and teaching at our middle school, and he couldn't stay away from track, and he ended up being our middle school track and field coach. And so Rick Ginner became my coach after coaching several very successful athletes at Emporia State in his career. And he kind of mentored me and gave me a step above the rest, really. The first time I threw the discus, I'll never forget, I put the wrong foot forward and just ate it. And I could just imagine he was probably thinking, what did I get myself into with these kids? He was used to high performance athletes setting literally national records. That's the caliber of kids he had been working with. And he worked with me through the summers. And, I remember my parents, we'd bring them, beef and stuff from our farm as payment, because he would never take money. And I'd wake up early and go in and lift with him. And going into freshman year, that's kind of the test, of you get your first chance at a state track meet, and, you get to shine on the big stage. And fortunately enough, I won state all 4 years in the discus and all 4 years in the shot put, and set both state records. I still hold the discus record. My shot put record's only been thrown further than one time. And so I was just very lucky, had a great support system, and worked extremely hard to get to where I was, and just had a lot of fun doing it. But unfortunately, at the end of it, my body kind of gave up, and I get to pay for that now. So wish I would have listened a little bit better when all those doctors tried to get me to stop, but wouldn't give it up for the experience and the people that I got to meet along the way.
So as you had all this experience with high caliber coaching, did they ever work with you on visualizing success or trying to put yourself in a position to where you had the best chances of achieving success?
Oh, absolutely. From day one, I would show up to some of the bigger meets, on the national events in the summer and stuff. And, they would run through the roster, and everybody would, try to guess who was who. And when I first showed up, it was like, I think you're in the wrong spot, because I just wasn't very big. And so I think everybody assumed I was probably a runner or a jumper. And I said, no, I'm here to throw things far. Go ahead and put the tape out a little bit. I was pretty cocky back then, and been humbled since in life. And, it was one of those things that I learned really fast that my strength and my size wasn't going to help me throw far. It was being able to hit every position, know where my body was supposed to be before it was supposed to be there, which is why I think I ended up studying kinesiology, because I was so enthralled by how the human body works and functions. And all of that comes down, I tell my athletes all the time, it's 90% mental. If you can throw that thing far in your head, you can throw it far in real life. And so he really showed me that, you can take reps in your head, and that saves you a lot of, physical stress. And so the older I got, the more I realized that, especially as injuries and stuff started happening, half of my training was done in my head and not in the weight room or the ring anymore. So really relied on that visualization. And still do today. I find myself all the time, when I'm coaching kids, shut your eyes and listen. It's when you can hear your left foot hit at the front, that's when your upper body goes. And so we developed a lot of visualization and audio cues, more so than, just trying to throw stuff really hard and far. So,
Corey, can you visualize 280 bushel corn?
That's what I'm trying to. I think we can correlate this to a lot of things in life, to personal and business. And yeah, I'm visualizing 300 bushel corn. I'm visualizing good podcasts.
Screw 280. We're going 300.
Yeah. Not missing any podcast. I'm visualizing that.
Hey, I'm there too. We're all right.
This is fascinating, because I've always wondered, now in my older age, really the only sport I participate in is golf, besides recreational exercise. And I've never had formal coaching and never had a collegiate level talented coach I just wonder how much. Well, I know that game's mental, but it just makes you wonder how much of a pattern, a repetition, a mental state of mind are those athletes getting taught. Just like you said on the track and field side, let alone could there be a segment for our listeners on mental frame of mind? Did you throw in high school?
So
track?
let's see. I did track my freshman year, so I did a little bit of everything.
So you're a
you
quitter.
know, like 4x2. No.
Oh.
4x2, 4x1. Yeah, I think I threw shot put. Tried all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
Didn't like to run, so I went out for tennis the next year.
Which
Tennis?
So I went to state in tennis, if you can believe it or not, after that. So I didn't quit.
I have to believe it.
The reason I went out for tennis, though, was because if you didn't go out for track and you had to go to early baseball practice and you didn't get any balls or bats out and you had to run. So,
So you're going to run anyway.
yeah, so tennis it was.
Tennis it was.
Did you run track?
No, I did not.
Did Montana even have track?
Yeah, I think they did.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I was in wrestling.
Yeah,
Yeah.
wrestled all year.
Oh.
Just focused on that.
Well, we're keeping Jacqueline from spraying
Yep, we
right
gotta
now.
get
What are you
into it.
What are you spraying? Let's get a little crop update before we get into it.
Yeah, we're actually working on pastures. So we live right in the Flint Hills, and so we've got some of the best grass in the entire world. And so we're out there just fighting Sericea lespedeza right now, and so we're trying to get it under control and doing a lot of spot spraying in the pastures and that kind of stuff. So we're pretty well caught up on all of our crop spraying. I leave that to my dad, and so we've been just working on pasture management, grass management, and that kind of stuff right now, where we're kind of sitting in a spot where we're just sitting and waiting for the next spray for the crops.
It's beautiful country. I drove down through there a couple months ago, going to Salina, and I've never been through there before. And it looked pretty dry when I was down there, but it seems like you guys gotten some pretty good rains as of late, haven't you?
Yeah, we just got 2 inches out of nowhere last night with luckily not as much hail as they got to the south of us. But yeah, we've been really fortunate to start catching some rains. We finished planting, I think, May 5th, and about 3 days later, it's kind of been hitting once a week, whether it's a 1/4 of an inch or 2 inches. So really grateful because we were definitely dry and needed it.
So what are you spraying? Grazon?
Pasture Guard right now.
Pasture Guard.
And then we're doing just a little bit of mixes with some Escort and Remedy, and trying to really work on some of the brush control as well.
Are you guys sandy soils down there?
No, we've got a little bit of clay. So we sit right on the Neosho River.
Okay.
And so we've got some heavier soils. The sands kind of start when you hit middle of the state and go out west.
I see.
Nice. Okay, let's get into it, right? So,
Ready to.
listeners, if you're this is the first time you've ever gotten to be a part of a summary episode, we know that it's a lot to hit every Farm for Profit and every Farm for Fun show. And it's a lot to stick all the way through to the end to get these powerful quotes that we've got. So, out of about 50-some shows, we brought 25 of them today. So, still, you got to go listen.
3 pages
if
worth.
you missed them. 3 pages of notes. And I hope out of this conversation, Jacqueline, that maybe you grab a couple of things that you can take to your athletes. But ultimately, listeners, I hope that there's some information in here that either refreshes the conversations that we had or gives you a little bit of boost to your day. So I try to divide them up into categories, Corey. And the first one I have here is finding a passion or a love, living that passion each and every day. The old adage is you'll never work a day in your life doing what you love.
Do we even tell our listeners that haven't listened before what the payoff question was?
We already did.
Yeah, so we started it that way. What does success look like, or what is success to you?
Yep. Also, thanks to Mama Lou, Tanner's mom. That's
Mama Lynn, yep.
Or Mama Lynn, that puts all these together.
Number one fan.
I will start it out because I'm just going to get this out of here because I told Tanner yesterday I hate reading off the sheets, but I found one before we started here that I like, and it was a good show. Ethan Clark, first-generation farmer from Indiana. His answer was long-term sustainability, financially and environmentally. Do what you love what you do, and if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life.
Yeah.
And I would echo that all day long.
So, Jacqueline, as we look through these, I just want to get some perspective from your side of thing, your experience, both as a collegiate athlete and as someone involved in agriculture, because Ryan Peter goes on to kind of extend Ethan's and say, once you find what you love, do it better than anybody else. So as you think about those first two, Jacqueline, what comes to mind?
Yeah, I kind of think back, when I was training, day in and day out to try to be better than anybody else, kind of like Ryan said, I never did work a day in my life. But if you make me go to the gym now, gosh, it feels like work, because I don't love it like I used to. And so that hits like so close to home. Everyone's always like, oh, do you want to go work out or do this? I'm like, heck no, that's a job. It was a job for so long and I loved it. And now it really feels like a job if I have to go try to work out. So
I hadn't thought about that.
Definitely feel that deep.
Yeah.
Your love can change.
Oh,
I've
had many loves change from.
We're gonna cut that segment out. Corey's had many loves.
They've changed.
That's the clip for social
But
media.
I'm just saying, yeah. If I went a weekend without hunting or fishing, I felt terrible.
We talked about that.
Yeah, and some others too, and I would echo too. Trying to work out, it does feel like work now because you have other places you would rather be, even though it's good for you.
Mm-hmm. So here's a question for you. Half of our reviews said this: do what you love to do. Then you feel like you never have to work again, or that you're getting paid to do what you love to do. Do you think farmers halfway through quit loving farming? Like, it's such a pain in the butt.
There are ones, I think, yeah.
I think there might be.
I think it goes in spurts because I also think that's part of the reason some farmers don't quit. There might be that gap in the middle. You start off, like Jacqueline, you come back because it's a love and a passion, and there might be a lull in the middle. But when you get to be 60 and 70 years old, there's that love that just tugs at you a little bit, and that's why maybe some of these guys never give up.
Well, and I'm going to go right into the one that you guys did down in Louisville at the National Farm Machinery Show. Dusty Berry, I like the end of what he says. He says, being able to leave something behind for your kids, legacy.
Yeah.
So some of them, they might get frustrated with it, but you still want to leave a legacy. I'm guessing, Jacqueline, you said only one person has beat your farthest throw. Does that legacy stick with you that, like, my record's on the board? Nobody's ever going to.
Yeah, I mean, I feel that way a little bit, but records are meant to be broken. And I think I've always had that mentality, and I think that's why I coach now. I want someone to get out there and put in the work like I did and break them, If it stands there forever, then that's not good. Somebody else didn't get out there and put in that work and strive to beat it, And so for me, it's like I want to see that done,
Yeah.
If not, other people aren't finding, I always say the sky's the limit, they're not.
So the legacy
they're finding
isn't
that limit.
The legacy isn't your record. The legacy is the hard work that you're putting in.
The
So you're trying
contribution.
to emulate the legacy of, hey, you got to work hard, kick butt, and take names.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's what it's all about, regardless of what you're doing in life. You should have that mentality with whether you're tying your shoe, you better tie it so that it don't come undone, or,
Yep.
Whatever it is, you better do it to your max capacity.
And I like the way the conversation started off. You immediately name dropped one of your coaches, Caitlin Niemeyer, who did our FSA Young Beginning Farmer Loan interview with us, said a lot of the same things. She wants to educate people around, do what she loves. But what I underlined is it matters who you hitch your wagon to, because that goes such a long way. Is who are you bringing with, or who are you hooking on to?
Yeah, and I think it's important, you got to realize that can change through each season of life. You stay hitched to the same wagon, you're just probably going to make a rut. You got to be able to hitch on to other people and other things. And I think that's how you don't get that burnout. You got to diversify and figure out where that new love may be. And maybe that means switching to a different tractor that you're hitching it to or whatever.
Right.
Okay, so how do you not think about marriage during that comment, right?
Right. I was thinking.
I've had many loves.
I turned right at Corey and looked.
When Dave said Dusty, though, I
Whoever he's going
had
to hitch his wagon to.
when Dave said Dusty Berry, though, the coal roller down there, best mustache in the game. I kind of forgot about that. We actually got him in trouble. Well, he got himself in trouble from our podcast.
but we
Can't
can't
say
say-
that.
nope.
From a very world-renowned vodka company. That
You're going to get him in trouble
no,
again.
I'm not mentioning anything. He said stuff that got him suspended from trucking.
Might have to
But
hitch to
He
a
was
different
well
wagon.
diversified, so I think he's either back on that or probably finding success somewhere else.
All right, next category that we had down here, I summed it up to family can be whoever you make or want them to be. And the reason I wrote that down is, maybe family's not blood. There can be connections brought in.
Right.
But it's all about family and how you treat them is kind of how I summarized this. And the first one that I popped in was our joint interviews, plural. We got half of it, Farmer Grace, in 2022, and the other half with Gavin came out in 2023. And he defined it as, if I'm happy, I feel like I've been successful, but ultimately having a huge crowd or visitation at your funeral, people who showed up to show your family how much you meant to them. So it's not a popularity contest, but more of, in his eyes, what have you done to affect the people positively around you? Mm-hmm. The other one that he stated here, the part 2 of that, was leaving things in better shape than when you found them or when you got them. So, Jacqueline, remind me again, how many generations has your family been farming?
I'm the 4th with my sister.
Yeah, so that's an ongoing example of everybody who has multi-generational farms. They don't get to this point without having a little bit of that mentality of trying to leave something better than when they got it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's all about just continuing to build on that foundation, and it helps when I've had a strong foundation to build on. And so very, very fortunate in that aspect.
Now, all of our guests that give, we tell them, you give whatever answer you want. It can be about agriculture, it can be about family, it can be about, what does success look like to you. Tyne Morgan, we were down there at the John Deere booth. That was a fun interview.
The Commodity Classic, yeah.
And being a mom, so she went right to her number one, which was being a mom of her kids. And then she said giving back to her community. But we're talking about leaving stuff, Tanner. You just talked about leaving this, leaving that. Well, leaving a positive image of agriculture.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. She also said be present, too, which I thought for someone that's on the TV all the time and in the social light all the time, that she makes it a point to be, I am present. The phone is away, when she's at home with the kids. And that's hard to do.
That was evident during that interview.
Yeah.
I mean, we were the only people she needed to talk to
Yep.
for that 45 minutes. So
Speaking of that interview, where do you think you find a leather T-shirt?
Do you know there's a Twitter page of what is Tyne wearing today?
I did not know that.
Yes.
There's
a
a whole page of what is she wearing today.
That is kind of cool.
We should start a What is Jacqueline Wearing Today Twitter page.
I don't know.
She's speechless.
She is
I
speechless.
think it has.
I'll go on to the next one.
There you go.
So one that Tanner and I did down at National Farm Machinery Show with Farmhand Mike. And I like it because it's nice, short, sweet, right to the point. Being a good person, when your kids are grown up, they still want to hang out with you. And I like that.
Yeah, I still enjoy hanging out with my parents.
Once in a while.
Well, yeah, I don't want them to stay forever. But no, there's not a time they come down where I'm
Sometimes
like, shoot.
if you're working with your family, like your parents on the farm and all that, there is kind of a hard, when is it family time and when are you my employee
I
or
never thought about
my
that.
coworker?
Yeah.
It's like, when do we stop and have a family meal or just keep grinding?
So, Jacqueline, you said you're farming with your sister, or the 4th generation is you and your sister. What's the family dynamics look like in your operation?
Yeah, so I work every day full-time on our farm. My sister is a high school math teacher just down the road, but she lives here on the farm. And so yesterday, the 3 of us were in the office working on invoicing and tickets and stuff. And for the most part, it's just my dad and I working together. And, I totally get what you're saying about, I feel like at the very beginning, I didn't realize how sensitive I was, working cattle and stuff can get heated pretty fast. Or, if your dad has ever helped you back a trailer, pretty fast. And so, I had to have this mind shift of, from 7 a.m. to 6 or whatever that working period is. He's the boss man, and not my dad. And when I walk in through their front door and go eat family dinner, he's my dad again. And being able to have that separation has really helped, I think, our family dynamics of being able to work together. And I'm not going to say it's always great. I can still be mad at the boss man, but when I walk in, I try to check what's happened through the day and leave it at the farm. And I try to do a really good job of that. And some days I do a better job than others, but it's always in the back of my head of, how lucky I am that I get to work with my family. And too, now, like, my mom cuts hair for a living. And so she's home a couple days a week. And when she gets to tag along and help us or shuffle us from field to field, make sure I'm intentional with good conversation during those moments. Cause we put in crazy hours and sometimes you don't always get all that family time around a table like a normally family would. So just trying to soak it up when you can, the older I get, the more it seems to be more important.
Corey, do you ever have with your siblings or your dad where they screwed up or something and you want to just unload like, are you friggin' kidding me, you dumbass? Something like that.
Yesterday?
Yeah, okay. Well, so here's the deal. Well, I work with my wife.
Oh, yeah.
So there's been times that I'm like, are you like, just shut your mouth. Just shut your mouth.
And you're thinking about later in the bedroom.
Because when you go home, you're going to have, I don't know if you can separate church and state if you're the boss. You know what I mean? So from the other perspective, it's tough.
I'm moving on. I'm moving, but that's a very valid point because there's a lot of spouses that work together. Not only is it family members, but we also, like our show we did with Elaine and Amanda last summer about working with your in-laws. When you get to that point, that's a whole nother level. But Noah Young kind of reiterated something here that Jacqueline said: being in good health, waking up in a warm bed in a house with your family, but stated here, being able to wake up and say, I can't believe this is the life I get to live. So it's a little bit of a family and thankful quote that came from there. But then when we move on to what Bill Rubis said from TinCorp, our cattle show, it's amazing, Jacqueline. We try to make these shows for as broad of an audience as possible, but whenever we do a cattle-focused episode, our numbers spike so high. There's something in cattle country that wants to make sure things stay profitable, or maybe they're just bored.
Right.
One of the two, right?
Right.
But Bill,
Maybe they're just bored.
Bill says helping producers change and grow their operations by having great conversations and collaborations with other people. That reminds me, or at least lends me to think of what you're doing in your coaching side of your business, just working to help make people be as good as they can.
So I got a question for you, Jacqueline. Being an athlete, so I do auction contests, so kind of not athlete, but
Competitions.
Competitions.
Yep.
And you always want to do better than you did last time. But not one person here yet of any review that we've read has said, make $1 million. That's my goal. Nobody's set the goal and then met the goal to be their definition of success. It's always been just be good, help somebody else. I got to think you're competitive. And if you're competitive, is it wrong to set a goal and be like, nope, when I throw it this far, that's success?
I think I always looked at it as that tape measure, there was never an end to it. So there never was going to be the ultimate success because there was always a mark on that tape measure past where I had thrown. And I think it drove my mom insane because, I could PR at a meet or win a state championship and I was still left just a little bit unsatisfied. I always knew I could do a little bit better, go a little bit harder, whatever it was. And I think I'm almost that way to a fault. And now that I'm older, I can see that I'm that way to a fault. Where back then I wish I would have been a little bit more excited in the moment and instead of looking forward to, when's that next time I can gain that, the extra inch or foot or whatever it was. And so it's an interesting deal because now in farming, what is your success? Is it a yield? Is it, not being mad at your dad for a whole week when you're working with them, or, what does that tangible success look like? And I think that's kind of the beauty of it. I don't think there's something if you put a cap on it, then at some point you're not going to be able to fulfill, that happiness, because then you've already succeeded in what's left to do.
Right.
I think that was the mission behind the question.
Yeah.
Because it's so hard to define. And that's why we wanted to get 50 different opinions
Yeah.
as to what it is, so people can feel okay with being happy. Because it's even hard for us as hosts to be happy, because we are driven.
And just like your love can change, I think definition of success, I don't think I know definition of success can change, because what was successful for me at 20, I don't really even care about anymore. But now at 40, it might change more to family or different vision or, business minded. I think it changes all through your life, because at 70, my definition of success might be just not being mad at my wife for a week.
Yeah.
You never know what it is. So.
Right. I think it ties back to agriculture in life really well. Like she said, is it a goal for yield? Is it a goal for money?
Correct.
And if you would have asked me make $1 million when I was in 10th grade, I would have said, oh, yeah, I can retire.
Correct.
Yeah, well, I don't think you could. If you got $1 million right now, it'd be tough to retire at your age. So,
Yeah. Well, Tony Reed, man of many words, says success equals happiness.
Yep.
Yeah.
Pretty simple.
I mean, there was a lot of other words, but those were Tony's best words.
I think that's why success can't be a goal of I need to make X amount, because happiness kind of covers so many different.
You've heard that country song, "Money Can't Buy Me Happiness, but it could buy me a boat
Oh, yeah.
and a truck to pull it,
Yeah.
and a Yeti 110."
Yeah.
Ice down with silver bullets.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, so far we've said that success is doing what you love and treating your family well. Those are the two that we've talked about so far. The next one is having a sense of community, whether it be in your local environment, an online platform, or somewhere in between, having a sense of community. So now we've got doing what you love, having family, and now having a community. So what kicks this one off was Mike Downey with Farm Raised Capital. He said here to experience the fulfillment of helping others, having a significant and impactful presence while helping them. That's kind of what we hope we're doing here.
Yeah. I just want to make a side note. I think this is probably one of the ones that our society needs to work on the most, is back to the community. I feel like something happened during 2020, and maybe it was happening before that not a lot of everyone's out for themselves anymore, and maybe just their family, and really don't maybe care as much about their neighbor or their community. So
Ag's gone so far away from it because everybody in the community, at least up here, Jacqueline, are competitors. You're no longer a community. You used to have to rely on the neighbor who had the combine because the other neighbor had the baler, and the other neighbor had the 10 hay racks, and the other neighbor had the wagons, and you all worked together, and it's not that way anymore. Is it like that down by you?
I'm really fortunate. So I grew up in Americus, Kansas, but we live in what's called the Fruitland community. Before we had, that was the township. And I feel like the people that are still in that area are very much a community. There's a family just north of us, the Hortons. We try to share labor, and we sit on boards together. My dad and Matt have sat on school boards together. I sit on our local Farm Bureau board with Stacy, the wife. And, it's all of us kids grew up together, and two of us are back home full time on our operations. And I'm very lucky. I have a community here that I think understands and still gets it, which I know is very rare. But I think too, coming home as a young person into a community, I had a beating heart and a warm body. And so they were like, what board can we stick you on? And I think that's so overwhelming.
it is.
I had 5 or 6 people reaching out within the first few months of, hey, Jacqueline Loeffler's back in town. Let's get her on something.
Yeah.
And that's great. But I think it's so overwhelming sometimes when you're just getting home and you kind of get pulled in 100 different directions. And so it's like, now it's like I've said yes to a lot of things, but I also know my yes means I'm saying no to something else. Mm-hmm. And so I've really been more intentional with where my yeses are going to be at, and serving my community in the capacity that I know my talents and skills are going to serve best. And so I don't know, I'm super lucky. I have a really good community. Lyon County as a whole is phenomenal.
Very good.
Yeah, that's rare. I
Yeah.
would say. We
Yep.
get a lot of listener emails that state it's cutthroat.
Yep.
If you don't bid on it, your neighbor's going to bid on it, and you don't get to farm
Yep.
it.
So hopping into one of the people that I look up to the most, just came into my life the last couple of years. Steve Sukup said down at the National Farm Machinery Show is when people want to be around you. And he's like, not just at the office, but also personally. And I think Steve's a gleaming light of everyone that wants to be around him because he hangs out with everyone from professional sports athletes to political people to just everyday people.
People on the factory floor, yeah.
Yep.
It was neat being able to take that tour of the Sukup facilities up here, Jacqueline, so that their steel make grain bins and buildings and grain handling systems, and we got to have the tour, and you walked around, and it wasn't like, oh shoot, here comes the boss.
Yeah.
Everybody was definitely still excited to see him.
He knows all their names, and it's awesome.
Continuing with the legacy theme, if you guys remember Commodity Classic, Chip Flory. He talked about this, and he just worded it different. It's when you're training your predecessor as he's moving into the next career of life or portion of life, your predecessor is better than you are. So it's like everybody said, leaving your kids something, but he wants to train them as well to do better. I think any parent does.
Yep.
You know, you want your kids to have more money, be more successful than you are, hence the term.
I actually saw, now I'm going to forget his name, Scott, How Farms Work. I think it's How Farms Work. No, this Farmer's Life.
Okay.
And he was doing just that this spring, training his predecessor in the side dress rig. Because you never know when you're going to need somebody else that knows how to run something. But Jacqueline, this is one that I had thought about as you were talking about, being a warm body and all your board requests. And it reflects on my dad's board serving, from school board to electric cooperative board to a church elder. But as we talked to Dr. Lindsay Peace at NACADE, the North American Conservation and Drainage Expo, she said success is leaving people after a meeting that I worked with, and now they know me better than I found them, doing my small part to make the world a better place. It's hard sometimes sitting on those boards, Jacqueline, and doing that, not just phoning it in.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I sat on a school bond issue board, and oh my gosh, you talk about that. That was the one time where I felt like my community was not friends with each other, and you kind of had to have integrity through that, and the people that had integrity that were on opposite sides are still the ones that are friends. And so I think we all learned a lot of valuable lessons about of what that looks like to have integrity and humility, but then also speak the truth and to listen. I think sometimes we forget to listen and we just like to speak. And so I feel like that's exactly what she's kind of saying. If we can learn to listen a little bit more, I think that in itself will make the world a better place.
So as we kind of reflect on the last two in this category, Ryan Holland, who is an attorney that helped us deal with maybe we want to put our farms into an entity, or something along those lines. Out of his quote I took here, success is being a useful member of a team. And then Ben Killoy, who we've had some of the most email responses to, is our Business of Fatherhood episode. And he said a lot of things also, but 100 years from now, or after you're gone, what will you be remembered for? How you lived, how you treated people, the wisdom you left behind, and what are your anchor memories going to be for your children? So that's what he was going to gauge success by, is something he'll honestly never be able to measure because he won't be here.
That's hard to think about.
Right? But that's tough. So
Now
now
we
we've
got to think of like some weird, cool thing that I always do and make sure everyone remembers me by it.
Make a T-shirt.
just make a T-shirt.
It's got to be something more than that.
You need to come up with a better company name, like Prime Performance Beef, that actually makes sense rather than just
Heck yeah.
farm for profit.
All right, let's go to the next section.
Yep.
Being of good character and having clean conscience basically can lead to the feelings of success. So it can lead to the field. Maybe not is success, but that's kind of the category.
Yeah, I think it helps. The general consensus in this category, starting with Quick Dick McDick, another stellar dude, people that are true to their roots are living success. It's not money or stature. It's being happy with who you are and where you're at, not comparing yourself to others. Jacqueline, that's got to be hard, not only as an athlete, but as a member of the agricultural community.
Yeah, I think, growing up, I was always, Jacqueline, the athlete, and whatever. And once I kind of figured out that my identity wasn't just that, it was so much more. It was my faith, it was my foundation, it was everything that I was living for outside of track. Track was just a really cool avenue that I got to use to express who I was and what I was good at. So for me, I've always tried to look at it, even in agriculture now, as I've done a lot of leadership programs and got to travel the world. It's one of those things that it's my platform, it's my foundation that I get to stand on to be who I am. It's not just who I am, it's just what I do. And I think once people can kind of grasp that, I think they have a whole lot more fun living.
Very good. The next one.
Well, before you jump into the next one, the reason I really inserted this into the episode is the number of times that you hear, how do these guys have that?
No.
How do our neighbors always have this? And that's what I think Quick Dick really meant was you have to be happy with who you are and where your farm's at.
I'll answer that. Their ground's paid for.
I see when you read that one, it made me really tilt my head because go back to the one we read right before it. They almost contradict each other. So the one was I want to leave something 100 years from now, and Quick Dick saying I don't care what anybody thinks 100 years from now. I'm happy with being who I am today, and somebody might like it. So
that's why success comes in many different packages.
Many different packages.
So that's why. So it would not be a show like this without a quote from Mike Burkhart, and his is. Where did I lost it here on the sheet?
It's underlined for you.
Well, no, they're all underlined. The one up top was underlined too. He said, don't try to be a person of success, be a person of value. If your values are right, success will follow right behind. And I think we get that almost daily on Snapchat from Mike. We can tell he's, and on TikTok, that he's a man of value.
Yeah, he lives it.
Yep.
He's a very good example of that. Same thing, Tyler, Mr. B's, basically said it the simplest way. Jacqueline, if you go home at the end of the day and you go to bed with no worries or problems, that's been a successful day. And I find this one hard to believe.
Why is that?
I struggle with that. I don't know if I'm not necessarily worrying, but just more so like thinking, it's like my brain never shuts off. I've got the next best idea brewing at all times. I think it drives my husband nuts because I'm like, my brain never shuts off, man. Like,
Good problem to have. Good problem. Good problem.
Yeah, like it's a good problem, I think, when I go to bed and I'm restless almost, it's like that means tomorrow can be that much better.
Yeah.
Because I've got something in mind to make it successful. Yeah. I don't know. I'm not a very content person, so.
Yeah. But that's what my comment was, is that I very rarely go to sleep. Now, when I fall asleep, I sleep hard. But exactly, I've always got thoughts, and I've got neighbors, and I've got family members that even adjusted their professions to have a job that when they leave work, they left work. It was done.
I think there's different, just like there's different personality types of type A and type whatever. I find myself more like Jacqueline that, hey, yeah, I threw it this far, but the tape's longer than that. There's more than that. Everybody comes up and like, wow, you had a really good year this year.
Mine stops at 25 feet. I need a different tape.
They're like, you had a really good year. Well, yeah, but what if we doubled it next year? I mean, what would that look like? That'd be cool. And then you stay up all night thinking about how to do it. It's not that you have a problem or a worry, but I like to go to bed thinking about what's double that look like.
Yeah. It's just hard to stop and just celebrate it for a second. Because I'm right there too. Do a lot of awesome things. Like, oh, we should celebrate. Nope, next thing. Next big thing.
We do that on the podcast.
million downloads, you know.
Yeah, and we did. We celebrated it a little
And
bit.
we did the same thing. Well, what if we could get to
2 million
this year?
Yeah, it took us 3 years to get to 1 million, Jacqueline, and we sat here and went, all right, let's do 2 by the end of this year.
Let's try and do it.
That's awesome.
It's tricky. So that was the category there, being of good character, a good clean conscience. How about, you mentioned success. Nobody said let's make $1 million, but we do have 2 here that made financially related success answers. When you look at Brian Brown from Brian's Farming Videos, he says, when I look back, I'm successful if I can pass on a profitable farm to my family. So it goes to the legacy comment right away in the beginning. But it's not just, here's a farm. He wants to set up a business that generates a positive stream of income.
Which, why would you want to pass down something that's a financial burden?
Some doesn't matter.
And some, yeah, but I think that's why a lot of parents my parents made me go to college. You know, you need to go, you know, because at the time it wasn't looking great. It wasn't financially prosperous. It was like, you need to find an option B just in case. So, yeah, definitely.
The perspective, Jacqueline, from our next guest, multi-generational farmer Kendall Johnson, actually ruffled a little feathers in our listener group. You know, just a perspective of being multi-generational in a farm of substantial size. He says small wins add up to large success. Successful is being able to continue the family farm, work hard to make the family more money than what you cost, which is a novel concept, right?
Right.
We talk about having family members pull their weight on a farm, but he says living broke until you can get your own farm, the ultimate goal is to get your own piece of the pie.
Oh, I like that. That's 100% like my mentality the whole time. Like when I quit coaching at the college, I was like, Dad, I don't have any money. Like I need more money because I no longer get that paycheck from there. And it like didn't occur to him that I would need more money to live. And that's where Leffler Prime Performance came into play. My sister and I had always sold our extra 4-H animals, you know, to people for butcher. And I thought, why am I still not doing that? There's got to be a need. If there was a need then, there's a need now, you know. And I went from selling 5 head the first year to, and that was, I think, in 2015, to almost 170 head in 2020 when no one could find, you know, food at the grocery store. I went from literally 20 people as a customer base to 1,500, you know, and I just keep growing that and growing that and growing that. And it's allowed me to be home. You know, my dad doesn't have to pay me a big wage on the farm because I've figured out my own way to be here. And contribute, you know, just as equally by having that without having to take that large paycheck to be here and support a family. And so it's pretty neat. Props to Kendall, because that is what it should be about. We shouldn't be entitled to just think we can come home and, you know, start farming side by side. We've got to earn our place and realize that it's a business and not just a lifestyle. So I am all about that.
Yeah, so Dave, you need to start carrying the weight. Your wife can't just
Correct.
have everything on her shoulders.
Correct. Here. So I think this is what you get. I think it'd be a completely different answer if we put, what does success look like this month? What does success look like in 2023?
Right.
Because then I can put a value to it. Like, my goal is 27 feet, but next year my goal is this. You can still have I met it, you know.
Right.
Mine was, let's win Iowa, then let's win the Midwest, now let's win the World Championship, and we're still gunning towards the Worlds, you know. So there you can still look back and say I was successful. I mean, being the champion of Iowa was successful, but what would it look like to be the world champion? You know, that's a different deal.
Yep. I think there's a lot of people in agriculture that are trying to farm that, like Jacqueline said, are doing these value-added things. They either got a job in town, they're trucking, they're selling seed, they're doing this or that. I think that's what I love about agriculture so much is it's not just about the cattle or the corn and beans or the wheat or whatever. It's that you kind of are your own boss, and you have as long as you have the drive, you have the ability to make it work.
We did an episode that was like 247, or I have no idea. We did a whole episode on that.
Yeah.
But that's a good point, because did it used to be that way?
I think so.
It was just different. It
was
just
different.
looked differently.
We were going through some of my grandpa's farm records, old tax books, 1967, 1965, and he had W-2 wages in there from Deere. He went and worked for Deere, John Deere, in the winter.
Wow.
When it was slower.
Yeah.
Right? like just something like that to help make ends meet. And he still had 250 hogs and,
Sure.
all this other stuff that he was doing. So it's crazy.
So, Jacqueline, the last category that we have is titled Make the Most of God's Given Gifts to You. Make your blessings and opportunities have an impact on others. Farmer Dan was our first one. The Lord called us to be stewards of the land, and we take care of it. If we take care of it, He'll take care of us. Live life to His glory. I actually got to talk to Farmer Dan today.
Really?
On the Ag News Daily podcast because they just came out of a 3-year drought out there in the panhandle of Texas and have had 12 inches of rain or 9 inches of rain in the last 12 days or 12 inches in the last 9
Now
days.
it's flood.
It's a mess.
Man,
He
I like
prayed
this next
too
one.
hard.
He prayed. Yeah.
Too many people praying. Swine Tech was the last one we got here. And I'm going to go right to the last line of it. Making your blessings / opportunities have an impact. Look back at the industry and see how have you made it better.
And Jacqueline, when we first started our conversation, you talked about how, I think you said it was the pastor invited your track team or somebody around a kitchen table just to talk life. And I thought that was a neat way to open the podcast.
Yeah, I think, we don't do that enough. And I've been so fortunate. It was actually the dean of the vet department at K-State that
That's
did
right.
that. But it was after church and, he called it Lunch Bunch, and him and his wife would open that table to anybody that needed a spot to eat lunch and talk life and just be loved on for the day, and that turned into being a support system and a family that, that wasn't our blood, but they were our family away from our family, like you talked about earlier. And I have been so fortunate to continue to find those types of tables to sit at throughout my life, whether it was the Richardson's table or getting to sit, even around a couple of board tables that I feel the same way about connections with those people. And, you kind of become who you surround yourself with. And I'm always going to choose people that value their faith and value success, whatever success may look like to them. And I think it's pretty cool when people can learn to chase their dreams together and then help each other chase those. So
We need a cool name for our Farm for Fun podcast, like Lunch Bunch,
Lunch Bunch.
like Brew Crew, or like something.
To me, it sounds like we just need to ask Jacqueline because she's got all the cool titles.
She has way cool titles.
Yeah.
So, Jacqueline, as we kind of wrap up this summary of the first half of 22, having gone through these quotes with us, what do you think success is?
Yeah, to me, success really can't be measured. Success is so individualized within the season of life that you're in. And there was kind of 3 things that I was always taught growing up. And I can say that I've checked 2 of those things off. And the first one came from one of my volleyball coaches in 6th grade. And the older classmen were being mean because I was good and taking their spot as a 6th grader. And she goes, "Don't ever let your head get in front of your heart. If you can do that, you'll be successful." And so that was something, even now at 33, I think about weekly. Am I letting my head get in the way of my heart's desires to do something? Sometimes you do have to check and make sure it's still a good idea, not let your crazy ideas go too far. But I've really lived that one out. And the second one came from my coach I talked about earlier, Rick Genner. I've checked this one off the list too. I feel like, and that's no matter how bad you screw up in life, the one thing no one can take away from you is your education. And, I ended up with 2 college degrees. I don't use them, but I think I'd almost switch out education to experiences now. Mm-hmm. Once you have those experiences, people can't take them away from you. And so to me, that's the success that's forever evolving now that I've switched that out to experience. And so continuing to take those experiences And the last one that really defines success that I've talked about a little bit already. I heard it first. I was in the middle of a pasture learning how to throw the discus with my neighbor. And he goes, "Kid, if you can figure out that the sky is the limit, you're going to go far." And he's not wrong. The sky is the limit. And that's why I don't think I can ever define success, because I don't think there's a limit to it. And I think if you can have that mentality, success is yours already, because you've already figured out that success is always evolving. And if you reach success, then I think you've capped your potential. So I'm excited that I don't think I can ever view myself as fully successful, because I want the next day to be better than the last. And so may sound cliche, but that's how I've lived out my life. And I think I've been able to find that inch, after inch on the tape measure because of that. So
I don't think I can summarize. I don't know if I could do or say anything better than what Jacqueline just said.
That was amazing.
That was really good.
The tape measure of life.
We're going to probably
Can never
use that
be
metaphor a lot. Yeah, it's a lot further than my 25-foot tape measure.
Yeah.
Yep. So that's it. That's the episode on the summary of what our guests have said success looks like, feels like, means to them. Jacqueline, you went above and beyond with your contributions, and we appreciate that. We are so grateful. But we get to ask you our new power question. Corey's going to challenge our listeners while you think about the answer to our new power question, payoff question. And it's interesting. I'll be curious to get your answer to, if you could go back and stand alongside yourself at age 18, what would you say? Because as you've reflected on your sports and ag life, your career, you've had such great coaching. I viewed this question more as those that maybe didn't get so much guidance at a young age and would like to go back and give that. So what do you think? What would you go back and tell yourself at age 18?
I think I would just tell myself to be more intentional. Every moment is an opportunity. And I think, one of my big things that I have now that I think a lot of people laugh at when I tell them, but it's like, always have 5 minutes in the back of your head if you get stuck in a room with somebody that you can talk to them. Those small conversations can turn into big networks later on in life. And, I think everybody always says it's not, what you know, it's who you know. And I don't fully agree with that, but I do think the more you can have conversations, be in the moment, and be intentional with those conversations, that's what truly makes an impact. And I think if I would have done a better job at that younger, maybe I would have figured out where I'd be right now, but I wouldn't change anything. I wouldn't tell myself to do anything different at 18, because each experience that I've had since that moment has made me who I am today, and I wouldn't want to be anybody different.
There you go.
That's good. Corey, what do you got for a challenge?
So this is kind of going off of my own deal, but like stopping and actually thinking about success. And I think it's several times or maybe each day. So what is successful, kind of like Dave's question, what's success look like today? What's it look like this week? What's it look like this month, this year, this quarter, or whatever? And I think if you can have more successful than unsuccessful days, months, weeks, years, then you're going to be living success at the end. So just stop, just because I get caught up in just living life, never thinking. I don't wake up and go, man, I am so, like you said in that one, I'm so glad to be doing what I'm doing.
Right.
I bet Tanner wakes up and says that I am so glad that I am banking.
Banker, yes. It says, I don't think anybody ever. Yeah. Jacqueline, thank you again. And I think you've lived a couple of these success metrics today. You certainly have left me better than when you found me an hour ago. So I appreciate your contributions there. If our listeners want to follow along with you or maybe even inquire about your business, what's the best social media platform and username to do that on?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram and Twitter at JAXLEF14. And if you want to see more about my beef business, that's where I kind of post the most at. Leffler Prime Performance on Facebook.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, listeners. We thank you for listening to us. And we'll be back here in about 6 months with another recap show.
Guys, I think we have a whole new payoff question that came from this episode.
Post the most.
It is, what is the coolest quote you've ever heard? Because I've just gained success can't be measured. Don't let your head get in front of your foot. 5 minutes in the back of your head. What do you post the most? Like, she had a million quotes.
Yeah.
We need, what is the coolest quote you've ever heard?
We could do that one. We could set that up because we're always looking for more like that as well. But thanks again, Jacqueline. Listeners, thank you. And until next time, have a good one.